Imperialism by J. Thomas and Jonathan Samuel. The United States wanted to build a canal to transport goods. They wanted Nicaragua to become independent from Panama so they can build it in Nicaragua. There was better engineering and commercial and economic points of view. In 1889, a private company in Nicaragua went bankrupt, which was an important part of the decision to find an alternate location in Panama. The U.S. hired William Nelson Cromwell to persuade Washington to build the canal in Panama. He was very influential part of the construction of the Panama Canal. Theodore Roosevelt became president after President McKinley was murdered. Roosevelt believed that using the sea to transport goods was going to allow America to prosper. He wanted the canal built quickly, and he didn't care where that was. In 1902, he asked Congress to give him $140 million for a canal in Nicaragua. William Nelson Cromwell was against this idea and was trying to pull together a group of people who were for the canal being built in Panama. Cromwell was able to find someone extremely influential, people to support his opinion that the canal can be built in Panama. But Roosevelt was successful in his attempts to persuade the House to vote for the canal in Panama. On January 9th, the construction of the canal in Nicaragua was approved. William Nelson Cromwell partnered with the United States in favor of the canal being built in Panama. He was able to win over Senator Mark Hanna to approve of Panama as the location for the canal. Cromwell was sneaky in the ways he tried to convince Roosevelt that building the canal in Panama was better than in Nicaragua. The Nicaraguan stamp has the Mamotombo volcano erupting on it, and Cromwell was able to twist the story to get others to favor the Panama Canal. He wrote in the New York Sun newspaper that there had been reports of volcanic activity. This was untrue, but it got other Americans to vote for the canal in Panama, as well as compelling speech Senator Mark Hanna wrote. An important date in July 19, 1902, when the House of Representatives voted for the construction of a canal in Panama due to the newspaper article from Cromwell and by the speech by Hanna. Jose Santos Zelaya was currently the president of Nicaragua. Zelaya was in favor of the canal being constructed in Nicaragua because he knew that it would bring his country a lot of money. Once Cromwell and Hanna swayed the House of Representatives in the United States, Zelaya was not upset about the change in plans for the canal. He began trying to rebuild Central America with the help of other countries around him. Zelaya met with the presidents from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Costa Rica. His efforts were unsuccessful and led to arguments between conservatives and liberals. Zelaya then sent out militaries to Honduras and El Salvador while the Panama Canal was being built. This footing between the countries around the processing canal prompted the development of Roosevelt's new declaration. Zelaya had just sent out troops to the countries around where the canal was being constructed. Roosevelt felt that the United States needed to get involved with the violence outbreaking in the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine had a great effect on America, so Roosevelt issued the Roosevelt Colony. The document stated that the United States could interfere with problems that might be happening in the Western Hemisphere. He hoped that the United States could help out other countries that were not as civilized. This document was indirectly responsible for the decision to overthrow Zelaya. Knox had been trying without success to find something he could use to force Zelaya from the role of president of Nicaragua. When Zelaya began borrowing money from the European banks instead of the American banks, Knox became enraged. This meant that Zelaya was hoping to break all ties with the United States. Knox tried to stop the loan from being issued, but it failed. Knox needed to find another way to get Zelaya to agree to resign as president. General Philander Knox was an attorney who joined forces with the Americans in favor of overthrowing Zelaya. His influence in the overthrow of Zelaya was significant. Knox was close with the Fletcher brothers, who owned La Luz, a mining company that Zelaya had almost shut down. This led Knox to a case with George Emory, who wanted the Nicaraguan government to pay for losses. Knox tried to use this to force Zelaya out of power, but instead, Zelaya paid what was owed. This attempt to find fault in Zelaya was useless and irrelevant to the goal, which was overthrow Zelaya. Knox was the resulted to send Americans who was against Zelaya to Nicaragua to tell the press bad things that had found out about him. After the news story came out raging that Zelaya was a menace, President Taft declared a death sentence on Zelaya. General Juan Jose Estrada became president of Nicaragua on October 10th, 1909. His presidency allowed the United States to gain an ally in their attempt to overthrow Zelaya. Estrada helped the United States by building a rebel army against Zelaya. His decision to build this army directly led to the overthrow of Zelaya. Estrada recruited Leroy Cannon as colonel and Leonard Gross in his army. These two men were influential in the United States' decision to kill Zelaya. The two men, Leroy Cannon and Leonard Gross, had been recruited into Estrada's rebel army against Zelaya. During the battle, they were taken by Zelaya's army and killed on November 17th, 1909. The United States was so upset by the execution of their soldiers, they claimed Zelaya as a war criminal. After the death of Cannon and Gross, Knox tried to convince Guatemala, El Salvador, and Costa Rica to join him in the overthrow of Zelaya, but they declined. The United States took matters into their own hands by writing to the Nicaraguan minister. The letter that was sent to the minister was called the Knox Note and expressed the dreadful act of Zelaya and the determination of the United States to not stop until Zelaya was gone. The Knox Note had a great effect on Zelaya's decision to leave if he was found guilty of anything that had happened. Zelaya eventually resigned on December 16th, 1909. He left with hope for peace and no bitterness towards the United States.